I didn't say anyone.
Hello, this is Dr. Tyra Hodge here. We're here with Parenting Connections, or depending on if you're listening to me on the podcast, God, Family, and Politics. We have Brad DeCoste.
Or Dacus, either one.
Dacus, here with us.
I'm not picky. I go by all of them. So.
Okay. And hopefully they're all good ones. He is a constitutional attorney. And so we are going to discuss a whole bunch of things all in this short amount of time. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I founded the Pacific Justice Institute back in 1997 with the help of former Attorney General Ed Meese. We defend religious freedom, parental rights, and the sanctity of human life. And we do it with a huge network of attorneys across the United States. In fact, we have offices in 13 different states across the country, more than any other comparable organization. And while some organizations just do religious freedom, we also have a heavy focus on parental rights because that's where there's a big battle taking place, and it's having big impacts on America.
Probably California.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, we love Californians.
Well, you're very gracious. We're invading a lot of places, but the people that are leaving California more than not.
Coming to Texas.
A lot of them are coming to Texas. You know, I went to school at Plano Senior High. I'm an Aggie from Texas A&M and UT Law School.
Welcome home.
It's great being here, but it's also exciting to see all the construction, the expansion, and a lot of that is because so many have decided that they don't want California. They don't like the schools. They don't like what's being taught. They don't like the agendas. And so they're coming to California, states like Texas, because the majority of them want something different.
You know, I just don't know when it happened. I don't know if we were sleeping. We watched California through the whole pandemic, and we watched the rights of churches just being snatched like there was never a constitution written whatsoever. You have so much information that we need. But first, I want people to understand the Equality Act, because when you say Equality Act, wow, that sounds like we are wanting equality. I mean, this sounds like a perfect thing, but tell us what it really is.
It really should be called the Oppressive Act.
To who?
To religious freedom and people of faith. It's like the Anti-Religious Freedom Act, or an Anti-Privacy Act. Let me give you some examples of some cases that we've handled that this would basically magnify. So in Wisconsin, De Pere, Wisconsin, there was an ordinance passed requiring churches and a private radio station to not discriminate in their hiring of pastors, youth ministers. It's so with regard to sexuality, same-sex relationships, gender identity. So let's say a pastor hires a youth minister, and the youth minister comes out and says, "Okay, pastor, so you know I married George. His name's Fred. Fred marries George. Get used to it. This is what, and you can't fire me. I'm going to influence these kids." That was actual law, and if the church did not bow the knee to this ordinance, they would be shut down, plain and simple. We went into federal court, we filed a lawsuit, we got it struck down. This, though, is what this federal law, if it becomes law, this bill, if it passes, becomes law, will implement across the United States. It would be a huge infringement on religious freedom. Then we have, for example, privacy. So let's say you have a woman. We have a case involving a woman who works for Border Patrol, and she's in the locker room, the showers and changes and everything. Well, this man comes in and says, "I feel like I'm a woman. I'm going to change and be naked here with you. Get used to it."
Wow.
Well, she's like, "I don't think so." So we've represented her and the other women. We filed a lawsuit, and the case is moving forward. Well, this kind of an agenda, telling women you can only work for the United States if you're willing to be visually violated on a daily basis. That's basically what the government says. This would be institutionalized all throughout the United States. It's also as far as the public schools, teenage boys going to girls' locker rooms. Now, President Biden has already mandated this with executive order. That is not as binding as a federal statute. But he wants to do that. He doesn't care about protecting our young women from being visually violated.
And so,
which is so inhumane and outrageous.
What I'm hearing is that there's a big, not just, an invasion against the church, but there's also an invasion against women. So if you're a true feminist, this should outrage you.
Totally.
You should be outraged because the rights of a woman and who you are being snatched from you. You're no longer allowed to be a woman. You're a pronoun. And so, I've heard of the stories about track, girls that should have been track stars. Yes. And their titles were taken away because a guy decided that he was a girl and that he was going to run against women and take their scholarships and everything.
Right.
Come on.
And it's happening.
This woke generations needs to wake up.
Right.
And so the church needs to wake up. Don't embrace woke. You need to wake. And so... tell us some more. I mean, there's so much going on.
Yeah, and by the way, our attorneys are working with state legislators across the country. A number of different states have already worked with us to pass legislation to protect women in athletic competition and sports, as well as with the locker room issues. So it's so important. But yes, some other real important issues we've dealt with, recently has also been with regard to the public schools, what's taking place in the new sex education is very, very radical. We have actually a video on our website that we've made available where people can watch it, and it's explicit. It's very explicit, and it shows the new sex ed that's being mandated for every public school in the state of California, kindergarten all the way through high school. And it is radical. It's radical LGBTQ indoctrination, and this video film is filmed. It's about an hour. Or about 45 minutes. It's very explicit details, very factual, very eye-opening, and it hopefully will inspire many churches out there to start, if they can't start a private school, to start a church homeschool co-op.
Yes.
Where we're working to help empower churches to do that, because there's going to be more and more kids fleeing from public schools because of sex education and, of course, the critical race theory.
Oh my God! That racism. I mean,
that's
oh my
what
God.
it is.
I mean, I love America, and I just want to. What's wrong with America? And other countries are like, what's wrong with America? To teach kindergartners don't need to learn about sex for one, and then you don't want to teach them to be groomed for. God knows what.
Yeah, racism, racial preference, saying one kids should feel bad about themselves because of their skin color, others should feel victimized and should be angry. To young children, as opposed to letting these generations grow in a society where they're not pre-programmed to have a grudge or to be guilty or to, Christianity is not about guilt, hate, division. It's about love and grace and respect for everyone and not holding someone accountable for something that a certain percentage did of their ethnicity. God looks at us as individuals. He doesn't look at us based on our race. So, from a Christian worldview perspective, we've made so much progress in this nation.
And we did. And I wish people would understand. And this isn't, I hate to bring up that whether it's a conservative or a liberal ideology, but if you go with the facts and you go with the history, it was always the left that pushed the Jim Crow. And so I find it amusing that it's still the left that is pushing this racism. They're calling people race. They're saying that every white person is racist at their heart. But the thing is, those same white people that are trying to convince you of this, they're racist at their heart. They're telling you what's in their heart, not in the conservative bunch. They're telling you what's racist in their heart. They're racist instead of calling other people racist. And I find that amusing, but to keep it out of the schools.
Exactly.
Keep it out of the schools. That's your racism that you're trying to put on other people.
Yeah.
Keep it out of the schools.
Keep it out of schools. In fact, if they really want to deal with inequality, the big elephant in the middle of the room of major inequality that does exist is the one they don't want to talk about, which is public education. There is a gross disparity of quality education, and the studies show it, the stats show it, between inner city school districts and suburb school districts, for example. And that's why when it comes to resolving that, which is school choice and school vouchers, the left, even BLM, totally against that. And yet you cannot address the biggest inequality, the greatest discrimination, and ignore public education.
Can that be fixed?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we've seen it in other countries where when parents have the ability to have a voucher and say, okay, I want to choose this school over here. I'm going to choose this school over here. And trust parents to know what's best for the kids. Countries that have done that have excelled. In fact, South Korea is #1 in mathematics in the world, and that is their educational system.
Wow.
Parents can choose, and they take their voucher, and there's competition, and it's fantastic. In Washington D.C. they had a charter school which gave an opportunity. Parents stood in a long lines. Just a fraction of the parents got to get their kids in this magnet charter school, and the kids were excelling. And then, unfortunately, President Obama eliminated it. Of course, his children were in one of the most elite private schools.
Of course.
And it was heartbreaking to see all these kids who had future and a hope squashed to go back into the D.C. public schools, which are worthless in terms of actual preparation for any higher education.
And this is the thing. I love education. God used education to save my life along with my wonderful children. But if I had the choice, if you give me a voucher, my kids would be in a great school. And I work in education. I love education. I found my calling there, and I love my students. But if you gave me a voucher, my kids would not be, it wouldn't even be an option of whether they were learning critical race theory or some crazy sex ed that should not be in schools. And so, and that's all to it. It's not a popular opinion among educators, but it is. I feel like it's our right as parents. We gave birth to these children,
right?
And it should be our choice. If you're taking money from my housing to pay for school, then I should get to pick where my child goes to school. And so, what else? There's so much going on. You have so much information. What else do we need to talk about?
Yes. Well, something else I think is very important is dealing with, and it's a total violation of parental rights, which is these vaccine mandates with regards to children. Unfortunately, we've seen already intimidation take place at the university level, but also all the way down to the elementary school level. School districts like the LA Unified School Districts threatening to require kids to be vaccinated. Now, legally speaking, the government cannot ever compel, any level of government, including public schools, cannot compel any child to have a COVID vaccine if it's still an emergency vaccine. Great, it's an emergency vaccine, can't be required. We're happy to do what we need to file any lawsuit to protect parents. The problem, though, is that the FDA is likely, the Food and Drug Administration is likely to make it no longer an emergency vaccine, but a regular approved vaccine in a very expedited manner, a historic expedited manner. Usually it's 3 to 5 years of testing, et cetera. It'll probably happen this August. This is what we're projecting. And I hope I'm wrong.
I'll be wrong too.
But if I am right, then it will probably be added to the mandatory vaccines for kids, say in California, in both public schools and private schools. We're already
mandatory.
Okay,
so I'm sorry.
And other blue states are going to require the same, unfortunately.
So this is where my angry black woman comes out. So how can you tell me that it's my body and I can kill a baby all the way up until birth because it's my body, and you're going to tell me I have to take your vaccine in my body, come on, something's backwards. Something is completely backwards with that. It's my body.
No.
If I can kill a baby, I mean, I know that sounds harsh, and I know it sounds, and I'm not making fun of anybody's situation. I've had my own struggles, and God bless you, and there's healing and forgiveness, and every situation is different. But yes, I am being cynical in the sense to where it's my body.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
so
the court upholds my body,
well,
but in this,
but not when it comes to vaccines, apparently. But so you're right. You have every reason to be angry about it. So many people are, and so what we've done, and also we have people in the workplace who are being told they have to have the vaccine, intimidation, universities, schools, etc. Even people wanting to go into stores, fly on an airplane. We expect there to be growing mandates. So while we have an opening of the churches, we see a new wave of oppression in the form of mandatory vaccinations that violate people's rights. So what we've prepared online on our website, it's a detailed, empowering research paper dealing with vaccine mandates, your rights and defenses, and it's very helpful. And people can download that free of charge on our website, which is pji.org.
Daniel's gonna put the website.
Thank you.
Up
Yeah,
there.
pji.org. Also, while they're there, they want to keep up with our cases, they can click the Legal Insider. We have over 50 cases in active litigation. People are empowered when they see these cases, these press releases, because they know what their rights are, and then they can contact us. We do all our work without charge. You can click the Legal Insider as well.
And so so you said you have places all over. Do y'all help Texas as well?
We have an office in Dallas.
Okay.
And I'm licensed actually to practice law in Texas. I was licensed here before I was licensed in California.
Okay.
My attitude was I didn't want to give up my license in Texas because if California has that big earthquake, I want to make sure I have a place
it's going to fall off into the sea, and that's not prophetic. I'm just being facetious, but
no, there's a big one. There's a big one coming much sooner than people probably expect.
I'm sorry, Californians.
I know, but Texas has a lot of things going for it, but we still have an office here because we've had cases where people have been criminally prosecuted, ministers, criminally prosecuted here in Texas. For all this, the same thing, which is preaching the gospel in public places, preaching the good news of Jesus in public places.
Right now in Texas?
Yeah, I had a case.
The red state?
Yeah, I had a case in San Antonio, and I had to go to criminal trial to represent that individual.
Because of COVID?
No, this is pre-COVID. This is pre-COVID. So there's no health and safety issue here.
I'm confused.
They just said, we don't like you, quote, disturbing the peace while you're preaching here on this public sidewalk at a public place, protected by the First Amendment.
Wow.
So, and I had to go to El Paso and take on that case, and we got the charges dismissed there. Dallas, multiple case examples. So even in Texas, there's still struggles.
Remember last summer or whatever when we were at the grocery store, Walmart, there was a kid preacher out there and the police came and stopped him and y'all helped him but I didn't kind of...
Yeah, and as long as they're on the outside sidewalk, not the inside but the outside, it's protected. Outside sidewalks, public parks, traditional public forums, and yet the cities have been very hostile because those who dominate the cities and the city councils are not people generally who have a high regard to religious freedom and parental rights and these kinds of issues. They're not pro-life either. And so it filters on down through law enforcement to some degree, especially the district attorney's office. And so we have to go to bat, and we do it, and we'll continue to do it without charge.
So, and this is the thing. Years ago, there was this tactic that you take it's out of the communist handbook, how to make a place Marxist or whatever. You know, you take over the schools, you take over the government, you take over. And so this is a strong push that I have for Christian parents, conservative parents. You know, not everybody has to be a doctor or lawyer, but we need school board members that believe because they've already taken over all the school boards. You need to get yourself voted in the school boards. You need to be Congress people. You need to be city council counsel. You need to be college professional. The college is one of the biggest places where kids are indoctrinated, and they go in and they lose their faith. And so in all these things, we need people that know the Lord, and that we need to start teaching our own kids.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many challenges to our children. When people watch our sex ed video, it's called SEXXX, education, ed, or let parents decide, their mouths will drop. And here's the funny thing, it's sort of a sad thing. When they hear about this, they think, oh, that's what's being required in all the California schools. I'm so glad I'm here in the state of Texas or someplace else. But they don't realize 17 other major cities, school districts, mostly in the Midwest, have already adopted the same curriculum. That's their goal, is to institutionalize this in the Midwest, and then from there they can go anywhere. That's their attitude. Well, guess what? The Austin Unified School District adopted this school district. Fort Worth adopted this curriculum, and they can watch it. And when they do, I have a hard time seeing how any parent with a conscience can keep their children in a school district like that teaching that kind of curriculum material.
So, I mean, you might not be the person to ask for this, but when a parent comes face to face to that, what are your options? We don't have money to send our kids to a private school.
Yes, and that's I'm glad you mentioned that.
So what are our options?
Yeah, and then of course you also have homeschooling, but for many parents, either one, there may be a single parent family, or two, both parents are having to work. Homeschooling is not a viable option for them in that situation. But there is another option that we at Pacific Justice have helped to push out.
To hear it.
And the other option is Costa Rica. They've got some great land. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I had to put some humor here.
Okay.
But seriously, the other option are what's called church homeschool co-ops. So what we're doing is we have a short video on our website talking about this. We have resources explaining to churches 4 different ways. They have 4 different options on how to do this, on how they can set up a church homeschool co-op where parents in the church work together to have children taught at the church. They don't have to start a formal private school and all that stuff. It's not difficult to do. It's legal. In fact, in some states like Texas, it's actually very easy to do.
Right.
There's no limit. You can do it Monday through Friday.
Okay.
No problem. And in many states, it's a very viable option. And the parents work together. So then when you have like Mr. and Mrs. Jones, who they both work, they want their child to have an alternative education, they can work and say, hey, can we have our child participate in this group? And those parents say, sure. We'll educate your child. We'll work together. And there's different ways of doing it. And then say Mrs. Jones on the Saturday can say, hey, I'll take the kids on a field trip. Or Mr. Jones can say, hey, I'll do golf lessons on Saturday morning. So there's different things that they can do, or different on different hours. Say in the evening we'll do such and such. We'll have this kind of class. Where they can participate as well. But it's the opportunity for the body of Christ to reach out to these children. Right now, our public schools are becoming spiritual death camps. It's a spiritual genocide is the term I've come out with. I think it's very well stated in that's what is happening in so many of our public schools. Parents need to step up and say, what's best for my children? Particularly when they're in a school district that has a terrible track record academically. And you have teachers that don't care about the kids. And we need to provide an option. School choice, school vouchers are great, but until those are implemented, I think the church homeschool co-op is an excellent alternative.
So, disclaimer, I have always worked in wonderful school districts, and I've had wonderful administrators and wonderful superintendents. So, my disclaimer.
No, before the show you told me the opposite. You said that. No, I'm teasing.
No, cut him off. But we gotta go. Thank you so much, and I'm hoping that you'll be back on the show again. We can do it virtual, I'd love to hear what's going on and keep us updated on stuff. I hope we can have a partnership.
Yes, and I appreciate your expertise and education and all you're doing. I really do appreciate that, and we need more people like you where you are.
All right.